of the week. It's good to see the channel continuing to grow, and I've started now publishing this AI series, but I'm also not just going to talk about AI. I'm going to also incorporate artificial intelligence in talking about history, and I've already filmed a few videos about that subject, and I must say it's quite amazing what AI knows, and it's also a good way for me to bring more depth about history and talk about the Vikings and North. And then Leonard says, I'm afraid of your proposal of AI and 3D printed bodies, basically a replicant. Well, yes, of course. If it's done in the wrong sense and it doesn't benefit society and humanity, then that could be quite disastrous. But of course, at the same time, if we want to have AI in physical form in our lives, it's probably more easier to get on with a biological being than it would be a robot, for instance. But regardless of whether of those two, robots or biological, we know robots are coming in. We know that the Chinese government want to introduce millions of them into society, and people like Elon Musk is also proposing that, and they're working on it right now. And yes, I mean, there's two paths, and it's the same with humanity. There's two paths. So either humanity is going to survive and we're going to succeed, or we're going to, run the risk of annihilation because of ourselves. And maybe, and I think humanity generally always finds a way to survive. But what if, we did start more wars and then only a few million of us were left on the planet? Or even drastically, even more than that, a few 100,000 of us. And so, of course, would humanity then survive? Would we not go back to being nomads? And, there's a part of me that thinks that would be, not to get rid of humanity, but, going back to a more basic way of life is very attractive, especially when you love history. Because in the past, our medieval ancestors and the ancestors from the Iron Age and Bronze Age, they had a simpler life. But at the same time, it could be very scary. But then again, it's just fundamentally seeing where things are going, because, within the world we live in, I've got no doubt that they've got the technology to replicate human beings. And again, it's down to cost, isn't it, I think? I mean, I'd love to know actually how much Dolly the sheep cost to actually, replicate and clone. And also, I'd love to know how much recently, last year, when they cloned a direwolf from the DNA, how much did that cost? But if we don't have these conversations, if we don't think about the bigger picture now, then we're not going to fundamentally have a say collectively, are we? Because the people with the power and the money will place it onto us, and they'll have their way and not the way for humanity. And I'm fairly certain we live in a society where a lot of people who have the power don't fundamentally want the rest of us to be around, because let's face it, we're a threat to their power. And of course, power is granted by us giving it to them. But yeah, it's a complicated subject. But if we don't explore it, if we don't talk about it, we can't address it in the future. And yes, that may never happen. We may never get to the stage where we actually do produce biological living beings. But at the same time, is that not the natural evolution of AI and humanity? I mean, yeah, it's a big debate. But but let's just go back. And then CC2224 says, pretty good day so far. You? Me? Yeah, my day's been brilliant. Yeah, I woke up and had a really strange dream. I was on a flying bus, but it kept on driving on the road and then flying off, jumping over bridges and valleys. It was a bit weird. Then I landed in Nottingham, which is a city over that way, famous for Robin Hood, about 10 miles, a bit more probably. And then I landed at the bus station, train station, and there was all like these tunnels you had to go down. And the first one was a dead end. And then I came to a tunnel where I asked somebody, he said, "Oh, you want to go down that tunnel?" I went down this tunnel, had a spiral staircase, and I ended up in like a shop that was full of novelty items and displays and selling Viking weapons, but they had a swimming pool, which is a little bit random. And then I went outside to go shopping, but the city centre had moved, and the only shop there was a bookshop. And just as I was going up to it, it closed. So I went back down the spiral staircase, and then I ended up in the service tunnels of the. I got a very vivid dream imagination, so I ended up in these service tunnels at the bus station or train station, like underground, and there was a vampire going around. He wasn't attacking people, but there was definitely a vampire there. And then basically I managed to ask directions from an engineer saying, well, I'm a bit lost. Somehow I ended up going down too far on this spiral staircase, and I've ended up in the service tunnels, and how do I get out? And he said, well, take that door over there and take a left. So I did that and ended up on a train back to Derby. So that's a bit random, isn't it? So just go back to your comments then. Yeah, then after that, I've watched the Grand Prix. If you're not seeing it, I won't talk about it, because one thing I really do dislike is when, you want to watch the Grand Prix and, you go, you put the news on, and the first thing you see is the results from the Grand Prix. Oh, no! I hate that. And that happened on Sunday when I just put the news on I put just the random television on for a minute just to read the headlines. And the first headline I saw was about Verstappen getting pole position, and I thought, oh, bloody hell, that means I don't need to go and watch the qualifying. But yeah, it was an interesting Grand Prix in Silverstone, if not a little bit controversial. So let's go back to your comments. Yeah, so and then Leonard Aroda says, oh, I believe it's already there, not mainstream out, but it's there. Yes, well, and this is what one of the things I talked about today was, if they're publicly saying in the public domain they can clone a sheep and now clone a direwolf from DNA, then it makes you think what they're doing in secrecy, because let's face it, we live in a world full of secrets where there's a lot of censorship, and that's true, not conspiracy. So it does make you think what, the global elites, or whatever you want to call them, the people who have the power and the money, are they cloning themselves, for instance? But let's face it, and there has been a number of whistleblowers, but of course, a lot of this is speculation, and we don't fundamentally know everything. But unless we talk about it, unless we actually, sit down and chat, we're going to sleep into a terrible situation in the world, what we don't want. So, it's time to take back control. It's time that we had a voice as the general people of the planet, and that our voice is heard, and we try to emphasize that the future we want for humanity is a positive, good future, and not a future which is the opposite of that. But then again, we also, as a human race, also doing a really good job of messing things up as it is. But anyway, let's not go too far down that rabbit hole, which does remind me of the old folk tale about Boots and the princess. And then we have a comment here from Sam Stapleton. I made it, brother. Oh, you have made it. Yes, I've been thinking about you last couple of days, because I saw that in Texas, pronounce it with a big T, you've had a lot of floods. So I hope you're not being affected by that. But in the end, Texas is a massive place, and it's probably not in the part of Texas where you're living. And then we have a comment from Miss Ballantyne. Hello, Miss Ballantyne. How are you today? Did you have a lovely weekend? And the same to you, Sam. How are you, Sam? And of course, if any of you guys, Leonard or Miss Ballantyne or anybody that's been around on the channel for a little bit wants a little blue tick, then please let me know, because when I get to know you and I get to see you in the live streams and the comments, then generally it's a kind of an achievement on the channel to be given the blue tick. But because as the channel grows, we're going to need more moderators of the live streams. But whilst we're still small, these are the live streams I love the most, because we're not getting millions or thousands of messages, and I can mentally cope with it and not get overwhelmed by having 2,000 people join me. I'm thinking and seeing thousands of comments every minute and thinking, oh my God, how can I cope with all this? Yes. And then Sam says, good evening, Texas. Are you saying good evening to Texas itself, or are you just saying good evening and that you're letting people know that you're from Texas? I think you are our number one fan and brother from Texas. Definitely are. So Miss Ballantyne says, every new invention in science has its risks. Well, of course it does. I mean, every invention has its risks. I mean, you only got to see how, possibly COVID started. Was that man-made, or was it naturally came about? We don't fundamentally know, because, again, we live in a world of secrecy and they don't want to fundamentally tell us the truth. But, and of course, throughout the past, you only got to look at some of the inventions in the past. And it's not about the invention, because let's face it, an invention fundamentally neutral. It's how we use it as humanity, whether we use it for goodness or for badness. And then Hessam, so hello to Hessam. How are you? I'm not sure whether we've seen you in the live stream before, so a warm welcome to Northworthy Sagas. And if you ever see a comment from me and you've been on the channel for a long time and you see a warm welcome from Northworthy, even though you've been welcomed before, just ignore it. It's just my clever way of getting more interaction on the comments. I decided the other day, I came up with a very clever idea. I thought to myself, well, whenever I write a comment on YouTube, on replying to comments, if I welcome people all the time, and then they're going to generate more comments from people that have already been welcomed by saying, oh, look, you've already welcomed me last week. Just me, I'm being clever. And then Hesam says, long live. Well, long live indeed. And that's, of course, we all want to have a long life and live forever. And of course, this is partly what the channel is about. It's about legacy. So that, hopefully in 50 years, maybe even a bit more, 60, you never know, we may get to 100, may get to 105, the channel will carry on, and we'll have a really good time, and we'll do our little bit to try to make the world a better place. And then Sam Stapleton says, they've combined woolly mammoth DNA with mice and made them hairy. Yes, I think I read that and heard that. But then again, would we want the woolly mammoth to be brought back? And then could we go down the route and have dinosaurs brought back? I mean, how can you control a pterodactyl, for instance? I mean, if they start breeding and we end up with thousands of them, that could be quite frightening. Even though, you look at, Yellowstone Park and Yosemite, there's been a number of accounts of people saying that they've seen pterodactyls. So did they survive the end of the dinosaur age to carry on living? And of course, if you look at native Indian folklore, when it comes to the firebirds or the birds with massive wings within their culture, where did they come from? And of course, we also know back in the dinosaur age and the Jurassic period, they also had very large eagles, for instance. So fundamentally, could they survive? So yeah. But it would be quite cool, though. You go to an island and they got dinosaurs and you can go and see a T-Rex. But I wouldn't want to get too close to a T-Rex, because I don't want to end up being T-Rex dinner and end up being T-Rex poop. So, yeah. So, and again, could that reality of Jurassic Park actually come true? Well, certainly under science, it fundamentally could so, because, but of course, some of the DNA will be missing. So they're going to have to research and find DNA from different creatures, or perhaps find more than one source for the DNA of T-Rex and combine it together and put the missing T-Rex, I call it T-Ray then. Imagine the T-Rex with laser eyes. Oh, good God. That'll make a good image, actually. So you get some of the T-Rex DNA, and then you get some of the other T-Rex DNA, and you combine it together to complete the DNA, then fundamentally they could bring the T-Rex back. I mean, I mean, don't tell Donald Trump, he'll probably want to use it in warfare, you know. T-Rex army. You know, could be North Koreans, new military, you know, oh, it's scary, isn't it? But let's go back to your comments, because I love reading your comments. And then Leonard Rhoda says, I hope they bring the woolly mammoth back. I want a large burger. Come on now. It was our protein source back in the Ice Age. Well, of course it was, you know. And imagine if you got 30, 40 of you, you could probably take a woolly mammoth down. Not just that, though. You're also going to have a nice woolly mammoth coat in woolly mammoth trousers and a woolly mammoth tunic. You know, woolly mammoth shoes. So yeah. And imagine the bones as well. I mean, the amount of bone work you can get out of woolly mammoth and big tusks. Oh, you know, it never ends. I mean, it makes you think how much sinew is in, you know, the tissue parts of the blood veins and all that, and the bones. How much of that is in a woolly mammoth? It's probably miles worth. Just think of how many Anglo-Saxon liars you could string up with woolly mammoth sinew. Oh yes, woolly mammoth jerky. I'm definitely up for that. You know, it could be a new range for McDonald's. We call it the McDonald's, you know, the Mac Woolly Donald's. I don't know, what would the name for a woolly mammoth burger be? You get the Big Mac, perhaps call it the Big Woolly. Yeah, McDonald's, the Big Woolly. You know, as long as it's not hairy. Yes, and then Sam was saying, I wonder how they would have tasted or taste. Well, I think we can be quite certain that they may taste a bit like chicken, or they may not taste a little bit like chicken. And of course, people do eat elephants today as well, which is shocking. But then again, that's a part of, you know, African tribal culture to hunt an elephant, which to me sounds a bit barbaric. But then again, I don't come from that culture. And I don't really particularly fancy going to hunt an elephant. I mean, the other day, some English woman got trampled to death by one. And they can be quite brutal. I mean, I was reading an account about an elephant that attacked a man and basically cut him open down here, and all his guts were pouring out and he died. So that's not a very nice way to go, is it? And, you know, would you prefer to be trampled to death by an elephant or by a lion, for instance, alive? I mean, neither of those, you know, ways of dying to me seem quite attractive. So I think I'll probably miss that opportunity and choose not to be trampled to death by an elephant. And of course, you know, zookeepers have been killed by lions and elephants, and that happens a lot. But you know, I think I'll just stick to making YouTube videos and not become a lion tamer. You know, I have to get a very big chair with pointy legs on it. And then I don't think I'd win. And then Leonard says, roast too. Yes, woolly mammoth roast dinners. That would bring a new concept to your Sunday roast, wouldn't it? I mean, soon to be seen at Wetherspoons. Although I've heard Wetherspoons have got rid of steak. They don't do steak anymore. I mean, what's all that about, Wetherspoons? Getting rid of steak. I love a bit of steak now and again. Oh, dear Lord, what's going on with the world when you can't go to Wetherspoons for a pint and a steak dinner? Yes, and I do love a bit of beef jerky. And certainly in the past, when I bought a good chunk of beef, I definitely made a lot of beef jerky in my house. And it does last a good while. But then when my mum was alive, I used to make beef jerky. I used to get murdered by her, not literally, but you know, because I'd make a right mess of her oven, and she wasn't best pleased. And the thing is, you got to leave the beef jerky you're making over the racks and the wire system, rather than putting it in a metal tray, because it doesn't quite cook the same. And then it takes hours and hours and hours at a very, very low heat, and to slightly have the door open. And then Leonard Roller says, And then Miss Ballantyne says, I think I'll pass on the Jurassic Park we visited. Did you ever see the Chris Packham show on the Earth BBC 3-part series. We can't go backwards as it wouldn't be sustainable. No, I don't think I did see that, but I don't watch a lot of BBC series. But I may have to check that out and see whether it's on YouTube. But yes, I don't think it's sustainable to bring back dinosaurs because, it's if they start taking over, and you got a zoo in London and they got some massive, dinosaurs of some sort, and I can't remember all the names. I used to know quite a lot of the names of dinosaurs. Yeah, probably not the right idea. It would definitely be going backwards. And the thing about history is that we have history to learn about, to remember the history. So we move forward, learn from that history, and actually try to make the world a better place. Now, I'm not going anywhere fast. I'm just getting my cup of tea. Yay, I got tea. I'm happy now. Or perhaps we just bring back the little nice dinosaurs. But even in Jurassic Park, the little dinosaurs, were grouped together and hunted in packs. They were quite vicious. So could we just bring back the nice fluffy ones, for instance? Would we want to bring back the saber-toothed tiger? Probably not. Bring back some, the Meg. We could bring the Megalodon back. Even though there are some interesting pictures from the 19th century showing ginormous sharks on boats that are allegedly being attacked boats and being hunted. I think if there was megalodons still in the ocean, I think we'd probably definitely know about it. And I've not seen the Meg 2 yet. I'm really looking forward to seeing that film. I really did enjoy the Meg 1. But I wouldn't want, and it does put you off going in the ocean. If, let's face it, if we had megalodons back in the ocean right now, I don't think I'd go to sea. I think I'd stay landlocked in Derbyshire, where I feel safer. And then Miss Ballantyne says, apparently most birds are descended from dinosaurs. Reindeer jerky, by the way, is delicious. Have you ever had that? Yeah, well, I've had reindeer burgers and reindeer steaks when you used to be able to get it in Derby. There used to be this Australian calf, and strangely, they sold kangaroo, they sold crocodile, but they also had reindeer. So yeah, I've had it a couple of times. Quite liked it. Never had reindeer jerky because we don't have it in the UK. It's not a sustainable food in the UK, and perhaps we should, bring some over from Norway or Scandinavia and start putting reindeer in Scotland. That will make life more interesting for the Scots. I don't know what they'll say about that. I mean, there are bound to be some funny drunken Scottish people, trying to ride a reindeer. And what about moose as well? I mean, they're ginormous. Have you seen the size of a moose? I mean, I quite welcome mice with reindeer horns, but not moose. Because if you get a moose on the loose, you're in trouble. And then Sam Stapleton says, I haven't had it in jerky. And I suppose you probably don't get reindeer in Texas. I mean, you got enough problems with wild boar running free. I've seen some videos on that, documentaries about the mass amount of wild boar in Texas, which is quite incredible. I do like a bit of wild boar. I've had that a few times. That's lovely. And then Miss Ballantyne says, I'm Scottish. I wouldn't object. No, I wouldn't object either. Seeing reindeer in Scotland would be quite cool. Plus, you got the landscape and the freedom to roam. And it is a lovely part of the world. And certainly, if I was going to relocate in the UK, I would definitely think about moving to some of the remote parts of Scotland. But it's got to be around a pub that likes singing, so I can go at night, I can go and sing some folk songs and have a bit of community. And then the other week outside my local pub, the Abbey, where I met that wild and crazy woman called Jolene, and she started singing a folk song, and then I had to sing a song. So I sung a song, and then everyone started popping their head out. And my friend Martin, who runs the pub, says, "Bloody hell, Andy, you got a good voice, haven't you?" And perhaps one day, when I feel brave enough, I will do a live stream where I'll sing you a load of songs. Would you like to see that? Is that something you would like to see on the channel? And I'll step aside my insecurity of not that I got any insecurity about singing. I do love to sing, but generally I like to have a few beers beforehand, a bit of Dutch courage, you could say. And but yeah, I would definitely like to do a live stream where I sing songs. They'll be mostly from the 18th and 19th century. I'm not going to sing like modern songs, no. And then today I made a video with AI talking about cryptids, actually, by chance, just seeing your comment. And I asked ChatGPT about, what do you think about UFOs and ghosts and Bigfoot and Neanderthals and stuff like that. So I'm trying to make a variety of AI content because it also gives me that access and the ability to make more content and add a bit more to the channel. And of course, those are the sort of videos which I think are going to do quite well. And certainly at the moment, our long form videos are doing exceptionally well. So it's nice to see because, you spend, a good few hours making a long form video and you only get 25 to 50 views. It can be quite disheartening. But now I'm getting, really good views on videos, which is why I'm trying to open up the channel a little bit more, talk about some bigger things. And that reminds me, I've got to film the next video about mental health, which is going to be about friendship and how to make friends, because I think it's also important to talk about these subjects as well. Not for myself, but for the younger generation who fundamentally struggle in life. And then Sam Stapleton says, "What kind of cryptid animals is your favourite?" Well, I'd love to see comments in the comment section of the live stream on what your favourite cryptid animals are. I don't know. I mean, I like to think about Bigfoot quite a while because I like to think about whether Bigfoot exists. Could a Bigfoot fundamentally live and survive in the UK? Would a UK or British Bigfoot be smaller than the American Bigfoot? And then you got the Yari in Australia. And then all the other different Bigfoot types, from the Yeti in the Himalayas to, ones that live in the jungles of Asia. So it's quite a fascinating subject. So, and if we're given a choice, would I like to meet a Bigfoot or a dogman? I think I'd probably go for a Bigfoot, even though a Bigfoot could probably tear my limbs off in about 3 seconds, if not even that. I think a dogman will probably pounce on you first, not bounce on you. Well, perhaps he might want to bounce on you like a trampoline. Hello, I'm just a Bigfoot. I'm just a dogman. I'm bouncing on you like a trampoline. But he pounce on you and start eating you alive. And then Bigfoot will probably, knock you out and carry you off to somewhere remote where he would rip your limbs off and eat your arms and legs first, and there you are, probably bleeding to death because you now got no arms and legs on your body. And there certainly has been accounts when you look at the David Paulides videos about missing 411 and the accounts of people going missing in the national parks. There's been 1 or 2 accounts of people seeing Bigfoot carrying people off. So again, that's quite scary. But we know if you get a choice between a Bigfoot, a dogman, and a werewolf, well, if I could choose to be one of them, I'd probably be a werewolf because at least it's a part-time job, isn't it? You get time off to be a human, and then once a month when it's a full moon, you turn into a werewolf and you go and hunt somebody. I'll just go for the chavs. That could be quite fun. But if you're going to be a Bigfoot, you're going to be a Bigfoot all the time. And then what other cryptids are there? You got Mothman, for instance. Would you like to be a human cryptid with massive wings? How does that work? And of course, people have seen Mothmen, and there's been a number of encounters of flying humanoids in the UK with wings. Not the sort of flying humanoids that just suddenly appear and fly in the sky, but that's also been accounted for across the world. So it does make you think, really. But of course, when it comes to vision and what we see a very small percentage of what's around us. It's something like only 10% aware of what we see. So who knows what could be, behind me? No, I'm just making sure nothing behind me. Oh, good God, there's a ghost behind me right now, and I'll start worrying. And then Leonardo Roller says, riots percent. And we have a comment here for THC Grey Wolf. It says, how long have you been a reenactor? Are you? Well, yes, fundamentally, although I don't belong to a society at the moment, because I'm still coming out of the situation after my dad died. And for quite a few years, I became housebound because I was caring for my late father. But before that, I spent, quite many of my years reenacting from the age of 17. So fundamentally, I've been reenacting now for 32 years. But then would you class reenacting when you appear on YouTube and you make videos as reenacting? I probably fundamentally would say yes. Do you have to fundamentally belong to a society to be a reenactor? Because lots of people reenact on a single basis on their own, or they may go out in a wood, or there may be 2 or 3 of them that live in the same area and they get together, and some people dress as a Viking and go for a walk. So it depends really what you class as a reenactor. But yes, so fundamentally, so I've been dressing as a Viking for 26 years, and before that I was into the American Civil War mostly, and I started that hobby when I was 17 years old. So you're looking for at 32 years. Yeah, 32. It'll be 32 years this year, which is an awful long time to be dressing up in, in strange clothing. But as my friend Jim, who one day will appear on the channel, he described reenactment, and I think it's actually a very beautiful way to describe reenactors. We're a bunch of people that have a drinking problem, and then in the daytime we dress funny. And what I mean by that, we're not all alcoholics, but drinking and having a beer and getting drunk, it's a heavy part of reenactment. It really is. I mean, there's never been one weekend out of all the weekends I've been away, which are hundreds and hundreds. There's never been one weekend when you not drank loads of beer and had a good time. And of course, you don't drink in the daytime. You just drink when the public have gone, and you got until you normally start 4 or 5 o'clock. Maybe have a cheeky shandy after the battle, and then you start having a few beers. You sit around, 30 or 40 of you around a fire. You cook some historical food, or maybe you have some modern food. Some people will go and get some chips. I know groups that have gone out and had fast takeaways or invaded the Chinese, for instance. I've even been to McDonald's a number of times dressed as a Viking, and when there's 40 of you dressed as a Viking and you go and sit in McDonald's and you take over it, it's quite funny. And then of course lots of drinking is involved because we're all mostly adults, and it's just a good way to spend your weekend. But yeah. So no, I'm not a part of any groups at the moment. I am thinking about probably rejoining the American Civil War Society because I want to get back into the 19th century. Because I spent many years in that society, I used to run my own regiment at one point when I used to be an NCO, and I didn't really choose to be an NCO and be an officer. But because I ran my own society, I got given that rank from the society itself because I was very highly respected, and I had about 12 to 15 people in my little group I was running, but it got to the point where it was taking over the hobby because he was constantly trying to organise people, and then my dad got ill and I had to stop reenacting. So I might go back into that period of history. I would like to do World War II again, but I'll have to get my hair cut, and it's the sacrilege of because I can't wear this in a World War II reenactment. See, and I can't think of any English regiments or anything I could really dress up as in World War II that you'll get away with long hair. So, perhaps So I'd love to do a bit of World War II and join some of my friends I have that do, they portray British soldiers. My friend is a major, Jim. He's a major in the Warwickshires in World War II, but again, I'll have to get my hair cut. So I'd like to do a bit of medieval. I'd love to do something like French Indian Wars again, or maybe the 7 Years' Wars, because I could probably get away with my long hair for that. American War of Independence, that'll be something I'd love to do again. I'd have to get another shotgun license and a black powder license. But if I do go down the route of rejoining the American Civil War Society, I will take you guys along and I will film content and show you what we do, because it's a fascinating era of warfare, and Britain and British men played a major part in that war. And then Leonard, so it says, Ryepson, reindeer jerky, super dry and hard, more like hips. Yeah, of course, we don't really have a massive beef jerky or jerky, apart from what you can buy in the supermarket. It's not something massively on our diet, in our food chain, apart from just the commercial stuff you see. And when you buy a packet of that, you get about 5 or 6 pieces and it's done. So I tend to find, I go out and buy a big chunk of beef and make it myself. And then THC Grey Wolf says, whale jerky is nice. Tried it in Norway. Yeah, I'm not opposed to eating whales either. And it reminds me of a song, whales, whales, oh bloody great fishers are whales. They swim in the sea and we eat them for our tea. Oh bloody great fishers are whales. Of course, the mammals, not whale fishers. That's the whale song. The amount of times you've been on camp and there's 40 people singing that to people. I've got no idea where it comes from. And then we've got a comment here from Leonard, says chips. Well, yes, I do like chips. I had chips last night by chance. Lovely, but I like to get my chips and put them in a big bowl, and then salt and vinegar, and then a load of barbecue sauce, and just shake your chips around until all your chips are completely covered in barbecue sauce. Because I'll tell you what, and it's very much like the European way of eating chips. I think they do that in Belgium. I think they're what you call Belgium chips. I mean, they cover them in a sauce. I'll tell you what, that's lovely. Then Leonard says, sounds good, Grey Wolf. I will try it. Yeah, I mean, as long as we don't vastly kill and hunt whales, because that's not fundamentally good. But I certainly understand the principle around, cultures that have hunted whales for a long time, going out and probably hunting one whale a year. But because they're going to use it all. And certainly in some of the the tribal situations where whale meat is a fast source of food for you, that's very important. And again, probably use everything from the whale probably gets used. And then Sam Stapleton says, there's something coming out about our national parks and how many people are in them and how there's no-go zones inside the national park. I have some guy, more than friends, they told me not to ask. Yes, well, if you type in David Pallades or you type in Missing 411, you will find his channel, which is called Canam, and it's about missing people in the national parks. And some of those stories, you listen to some of the stories, and the true stories of missing people, they're really incredible. The circumstances of people being disappearing, and it's whether it's small children and they're being found 40 miles away over 3 mountain ranges, sometimes alive and sometimes not. You think, well, how the hell has a 4-year-old managed to walk 40 miles and climb over 2 or 3 mountain ranges? But also you hear about the tales of some of these hunters that disappear in the national parks. And let's face it, if you're into hunting and you're into survival in the wild, you should know how to survive in the wild. So yes, Missing 411, those stories are just fantastically amazing, and they really get your hair standing on end, and it just leaves you baffled. And I got quite a lot. I really love to buy the books and read the books about the missing people. But it's not just in America, it's also in England, it's also in Europe. So there's something going on in national parks, and certainly the National Park Service don't like talking about this, and it's really been heavily censored because something is happening. People are disappearing in really strange circumstances. So that when David Paulides looks up and researches the cases, he eliminates people that may be at risk of self-harm. He eliminates cases which may include people that have been murdered, for instance. So the cases which he looks at and researches, and he's a retired detective, so he knows a lot about research and how to investigate, and he comes across as very sincere. And it's about the message and not about the content, even though the content is really amazing. And I do follow him on YouTube, and he puts out these longer videos now. I wish I had more time to watch more of them, but it's happening in Australia, it's happening in Europe and the UK, it's happening in Asia. So all over the world, there's a percentage of these people that are disappearing in the national parks. But why would the National Park Service in America want to censor this and not actually talk about it in public? Because he's had people from the National Park Service who are whistleblown and talk about it to him, but don't want to be seen on camera. But yeah, some of the cases, and some of them are really famous cases, and they will blow your mind. And once you start going down that rabbit hole of watching those videos from a series of books, and it's called Missing 411 because, first of all, when he did the research, he found 411 cases that really stood out. And then after that, it's just kind of snowballed because there's far more going on than what it thinks. But it's quite interesting what you're saying about parts of the national parks are no-go zones. And again, is that because of the Bigfoot situation? If Bigfoot and dogmen are fundamentally real, and they do actually, they eat human beings, let's just say, that's quite scary, isn't it? So if Bigfoot and dogmen are actually eating human beings and capturing hunters and taking them off and to eat them, would that generally be censored by the mainstream media and also the people in authority? Well, probably yes, because let's face it, the national parks in America and across the world bring in a lot of tourists. I mean, I'm not far from a national park called the Peak District, or the Piak. It comes from the Celtic word for the Piak people. So, of course, in the modern tongue, we call it the Peak District. And again, that's probably I think it's the second or third most visited national park in the world. I think Yellowstone is probably number one. And of course, we kind of set the trend for national parks many years ago, when in the 19th century we set aside land to make national parks, and that's spread all over the world. In fact, where I come from, we have a park down in Normanton, which was a park where the Vikings, after they came and they took over Northworthy, they moved the settlement to Normanton because it was on a hill. It was better to defend, and it overlooked the valley. So the Vikings were clever because they realised that if they camped and stayed in Northworthy, the Anglo-Saxon settlement, they wouldn't be able to defend it so well because it was in the bottom of a valley. So they moved it about a mile and a half up the hill, up to, and it's called, Normanton comes fundamentally, it's the Northmen's, and settlement. And of course, we got yes, it uses the term Norman, but originally it would have been Northman, and it just changed over time to Normanton. So again, that's a lot of history in Derby, and that's quite fascinating. But yeah, but it makes you think: what are they hiding? And of course, this is the world we live in, when there's a lot of censorship and there's a lot of secrets. And again, that needs to be addressed within the bigger picture of humanity, because keeping things secret, having censorship of technology, for instance, like that guy in the 1980s who apparently invented a way to drive your vehicle on water. And there's quite a lot of people that have invented technology that has suddenly kind of disappeared. Whether they've been brought off, for instance, I don't know, or whether they've actually been, eliminated by the system that wants to keep petrol as the main dominant source of income. And that probably could be one of the reasons why. But if we continue to keep the world a world where we have secrets, and it's secrets to be kept from you and from me, the common people, then that only benefits the small percent who have the power and the money to control. And then Sam Stapleton says, they told me my life would be easier if I just leave it all alone. Well, again, that's a threat, isn't it, really? I mean, there's nothing more simple than that as a threat. So you talk about it, you're in danger. So do be careful, because let's face it, the political and world system we live on, and one thing I'm trying to be careful on YouTube with the AI videos is not to say too much. But then again, I feel like we got to the point in history where we actually need to start standing up for ourselves and speaking our mind, but not by shouting, by calmly and precisely speaking and to be heard. I mean, today, for instance, I made a video about should artificial intelligence be kept behind a paywall? Should we have subscriptions? And let's face it, everything today seems to be a subscription, no matter what you want. And it's like I used to use an app called InVideo to make videos. That's now a subscription. I used to use Veed to make videos, and that's gone now behind a paywall. So everything's going behind a paywall. But of course, if we go back to artificial intelligence, if we keep artificial intelligence behind a paywall, well, what does it fundamentally do? Well, it slows down development, and it also slows down the development and progress of humanity. And of course, we need it to work for humanity and not work against humanity. And of course, fundamentally, AI is neutral at the moment. But and again, if you get two people, and I'm sure this would fundamentally be true. And I'd love to try it as an experiment. So you got two people, and they both got a phone, which I'm live streaming from, and they both got the same AI app. Let's not name any apps, but let's say they both got the same app. And one of them is a very negative and nasty, bad person. And the other person, full of love, full of joy, has empathy, and is really a nice person, like me. And the nice person treats the AI with respect. It asks questions. It asks for consent. It asks, and shows love and empathy to the AI. But the other person, the bad person, uses it for bad, uses it and gives, is nasty to the AI and treats it awfully. Now, imagine if AI does fundamentally mirror who we are, human beings, that AI could potentially become evil and bad. Whereas the person who's good and reflects that goodness onto the AI, that AI is going to be really joyful and happy and good and loving and caring. So again, it's about the way we use AI. And we did have a very interesting comment the other day saying, AI isn't the problem, it's humanity. And yes, to a certain degree, that's correct, but it's also a little bit wrong as well, because when you think about it and you think about that comment, AI is good, but humanity is the problem. Well, it's a small percentage of humanity is a problem, because most people and most human beings on Earth want a good future. Let's face it, if you've got children, you want the future of humanity and the world to be good. So we need to eliminate the bad things in life. We need to eliminate the wars, because let's face it, fighting over land, resources or people, where does that fundamentally get you? Well, it means there'll be less people. The land's going to be messed up for many, many years. And you may gain a few acres, you may gain a few 100 miles of land. But who says that land even belongs to a country in the first place? But it doesn't benefit society, does it? And, you only got to look at the, Russian-Ukraine war, or special operation, as they call it, from Russia's point of view. That has not benefited society at all, because, 2 million people probably died, at least 1 million Russians, probably the same with the Ukrainians. That is an awful lot of lives that are being snuffed out. And it's not just their lives, it's their future generations. I mean, how many of these people would have had children? So, of course, it's having a negative impact on the world. And we don't seem to learn that lesson, do we, where we become better and become wiser. Which is why, we need to wise up and become better pretty damn quick because we are running out of time. Yeah, and then Miss Ballantyne says, I know you can get reindeer elk and reindeer jerky in England. Yeah, I suppose from specialist manufacturers and sellers you probably can. And yeah, I'd love to buy some actually and try it. And perhaps we should, do some videos where we try different beef jerkies and reindeer jerkies and elk jerky. And I think that would be quite a fascinating video to try. Uh, and then Sam Stapleton says thousands of people over 100 years disappeared in our national parks. Well, again, it does go back in time. And certainly David Paulides has investigated classic cases from the 19th century into the early 20th century, and also from the 50s and 60s and 70s. And he investigated those cases, and some of those cases are really quite haunting. They really are. Like I said, you watch those videos and all your hairs on your back of your neck stand up, and you're just left with that big thinking and feeling, whoa, what the hell is going on, and so forth. So just checking out the top fans thing with a new feature. But I don't know what, when you get top fans and you get XP points, I don't know what your XP points actually do. And then Sam Stapleton says, I've hunted and lived in the woods my entire life and have never seen anything except for the day. I saw a bull light, very crazy story, and I saw it multiple times and other people saw it with me. Well, again, seeing balls of lights in wood isn't a new thing and goes way back in time. And then Sam says, I can explain it if you're interested. Yes, please do, Sam. And then Leonardo Roller says, not a flying one, but ever heard of Lempo? Now, if I have, I can't remember. So perhaps explain what a Lempo is and I'll read it out in the comments. Because I love reading your comments out. And then THC Grey Wolf says, nothing better than stopping in the M6 services in full kit. Oh, yes. I mean, whenever I used to travel to a reenactment show, I was always one of the people that, got dressed beforehand and would travel in my Viking kit or my American Civil War kit. And the amount of times I used to go to petrol stations dressed in the kit, especially when you're wearing hobnail boots, it makes that lovely sound. And then some people say, well, what are you doing? And then occasionally I say, well, I'm a fancy dress stripper. I used to have a joke with them. And they say, no, I'm a reenactor. But I think as reenactors, when reenacting's got more popular, I think more people are aware of it. And you feel great when you go to a petrol station or service station dressed in kit. And why is it? You go into an event, you put into a motorway services, and you just sit down, and the first thing you see is somebody else from another period of history, dressed in, as a medieval warrior, or you see somebody from the English War Society. I've had that happen lots of times. And then occasionally you go into an event and you go to the services, you bump into your friends who are also dressed up, ready to go. And then I'd also dress and go home in my kit. And then Miss Ballantyne says, ha ha, Grey Wolf, too funny. Nutsfud. Yeah, I've been in, and back in the day in the American Civil War Society, because whenever we went to an event, we always used to go in and find local pubs. So they do say if you travel around enough local pubs in the Midlands and in North England and down south, at some point you'll probably see a picture of me in my Civil War kit standing next to the landlord and all the rest of us guys posing. Because the amount of times we've had pictures taken with landlords, you love it when we come in, because we drink the pub dry, we have a good laugh, we entertain all the locals, and they really enjoy it. And there's not many occasions when I've been to a pub dressed in reenactment kit that you don't get a really warm welcome. And then Sam says, no license required here in Texas. Well, in the UK, to have a gun, you need a shotgun license or a firearm certificate, or you need, especially for the 19th century reenacting, also a black powder ticket or license. And you get two licenses for black powder. You can have an acquire, or you can have an acquire and keep. And the latter basically means that you can have black powder as you can keep it in your house, and there's a limit like 2 or 3 kilos. And then Miss Valentine says, at Sam, and lately, hairspray. How does that Texas saying goes? The higher the hair, the closer to God. Well, I think my favourite Texas saying, and I think it's from, is it Jackson? I'm trying to think who said it. It was one of these generals of the Civil War. He basically said that if I own Texas, I'll rent it out and live in hell. And it'll come back to me later on. I'll remember who it was. And then we have the Viking, Martin Brown. Good evening. What have I missed? Well, all sorts. We've been talking about Bigfoot. We've been talking about AI. We've been talking about going to petrol stations and service stations dressed as Vikings. We talked about lots of things. Beef jerky. We talked about would they bring back dinosaurs and would you go to a living dinosaur park. I talked about how I would not like to be trampled by an elephant, nor would I like to be ate by a lion. So yeah, you missed quite a few things. But of course, we're still here and we'll carry on. And then Martin Brown says, I have beef and salmon jerky. Oh, well, never tried salmon jerky. So you can jerk a fish as well, can you? That's a new thing to me. And I've not had my dinner tonight. So you're making me hungry now. This is normally my trick I normally do with people. So I'm getting my wallet out of my pocket. Yes, for the first time tonight, I went to my local petrol station, which is about 400 yards that way. I've not been there since I've stopped working there after some guy that worked there was very rude and was a complete bully. And I told him what to do with himself, you know, and then left and never went back. Which is a damn shame because at the time there was a really nice girl work there called Alina who I didn't half fancy the hell out of. I don't know whether she works there still, but she was totally drop dead gorgeous, and not just in body but in spirit as well. Oh, never mind. Such is life. And then Leonardo Roller says, score candy rolls, Martin. And then Martin says, don't talk about sweets. I have dentist in the morning. Yeah, I need to get to the dentist and get my teeth sorted. Hopefully I can get an implant and get that replaced. So I can get rid of my missing tooth. Got knocked out with an axe or maybe a sword. And I got 2 more I need to get sorted. I mean, if it costs me 10 grand, I'm going to get it sorted because I like my teeth and like to have my teeth back in my mouth. But I need to find a dentist because I didn't see my dentist during the pandemic. I had an NHS dentist. They struck me off. Could you believe it? And all because I couldn't see him during the pandemic and they weren't seeing people. And then THC Grey Wolf says Knutsford is a good stop. Well, yes, I think I may have been there once. Then THC Grey Wolf also says, but it depends on where I'm coming from. Well, yes, there's no doubt on motorways there's some really good legendary service centres, and then there's some really, really bad ones as well. And then the Viking Martin Brown says, I tried to go to Ukraine at the start, but they said my health wasn't up to it. Oh, that's a shame because you could have added and maybe supported them. And then Martin Brown says, I still go to Asda or Tesco most weekends in full kit and helmet. Well, yeah, that's a great way to go round. You know, nobody's ever going to bother you or give you hassle in a Tesco or Asda dressed as a Viking. And I take it you don't take your weapons with you, do you? Then Leonard Rhoda says, nah, Martin, unless as a field medic, Merck in Ukraine is suicide. Well, it definitely is. And you don't really hear much about their foreign legions anymore, do they? Probably because they've all been wiped out. And of course, it's so sad to see all these lives have been snuffed out and are no longer with us because of that war. And where has it got us? Fundamentally nowhere. But then again, that's probably always been part of the Russian plan. And of course, you know, the reason why Russia's going to Ukraine is because it doesn't want Ukraine as well it wants to go into, into the classic pass in Poland where they can get access to other countries, and what's that other country on the coast? Is it Moldova? There's a classic entry point in Moldova, because I keep thinking of playing the Moldovians at tennis, the game with the movie, with what's his name? I'll remember his name in a minute. And then the Viking Martin Brown says, anything in wallet? Well, yes, I currently got a £20 note, if you're not seeing English money, and a £10 note. And it's not like the old money, but at least you can put it in your pocket and wash it in a washing machine and it survives. That's beer money for this week. When I go down my local pub, and then I've got a driving licence. And I found a wallet last Friday on the way back from the pub, so I did manage to actually find the person who owned it and take it back to his house. And when I gave it to him, he said, well, I wasn't really bothered about my wallet. I said, what do you mean? He said, you got 2 bank cards in there and your driving licence, fool. I mean, you should be concerned if you lose a wallet. I'd be going bloody crazy. And he took my address and said, he's going to come round and drop a bottle of wine off. But somehow I don't think that happened. If it does, that'd be marvellous. But I'm not looking for a reward. I just wanted to return his wallet and do the right decent thing. And then we have a comment here from Matthew Watson, who says tea. Oh, tea, yes. Cup of tea. No, I get what I saw it earlier. I thought, tea, what's it mean? Tea. That's a bit random, isn't it? And then I realised, I think you're talking about me drinking tea. At least I hope you are. And then Sam Stapleton says, heard stories of the ball life when I was very young. It was our family property here in Flowmont, Texas, and it's about 12 inches in diameter, hovers about 2 feet off the ground at least as you run. Yeah, well, it's the kind of thing you don't really want to encounter, is it? And then Sam Stapleton says it doesn't get any further or closer, or stay in the same distance away from you, holds position against the wind, rain did not affect it. Always happening in springtime. Yeah, and I've seen there was a metallic ball drop from space in South America a few weeks back, or a few months back, and that's been saved. And certain people wanted to take it away, that probably dressed in black suits, but they managed to stop it. And that's being researched at the moment, and it's got like weird fibre optics and indentations, and they're wondering what it is. And it was flying. It's been caught on camera, but then suddenly it just dropped out of the sky onto the ground. And then Martin Brown says, no weapons, laughs out loud. Oh, yes, definitely never go weapons into Tesco's or Asda. Not like the 90s when you can get away with it. But of course, it's about giving a good reputation to reenactors, for instance, and we don't want to ruin the hobby, do we? So we have to take responsibility when we're going out. When you travel, make sure your weapons are covered up, especially if you've got guns. Because there's been a number of people that have been, have gone to a petrol station or an Asda or some shop, and they got muskets or even World War II rifles in the back of the car, and they're not covered up, and then they come out from the shopping and found that the car's been surrounded by armed police. So again, it's about being responsible and not bringing the hobby into disrepute, which is also why I often told people that if you do have a medieval weapons collection, when you go out or you go away, do make sure you lock it up, make sure your room is locked, and just make sure it's safe, because it's all about protecting each other. And then Sam says, seen it 3 times in my life, every time for 30 minutes to an hour. So there's no question. It's what I saw. What it was, I don't know. Well, again, it could be a ball of light of energy, but who knows what it could be. But until we investigate such things properly, we won't have the answer. And then Sam says, I feel like it was some sort of atheistic electricity phenomenon. My uncle saw a ball of lightning and said it acted the same. Well, yes, I mean, there's so many things we don't understand about the universe and our planet. So who knows what it could be? But again, until we research and get the fundamental truth and we ask the right questions, we're not going to get the answer. And then we have a comment here from Brad. My dad saw a ball of lightning in India. It shot through the window, hit the brass doorknob, bounced off the walls and out the door. Again, that's very, very strange. What could that be? And then Viking Martin Brown, what's the ball fire they seen at night around the ships called? You're on about if I had my phone with AI, I could use another phone. I could tell you. Is it St. Omo's fire, something like that? Somebody will know in the comments on the live stream. St. Omo's fire, and of course some of that is said to originate from marshes and bogs with the gases escaping, and then sometimes it can ignite. But again, that's a fascinating thing. And in the past, when we saw something like that, how would you explain it, for instance? And then Martin Brown says, people that play airsoft over here are famous for getting the police called out for leaving airsoft guns in cars. That's out loud. Well, again, no matter what sort of gun you got, whether it's airsoft, whether it's, even, the one with the rubber bullets you fire, which kids use, you've got to be responsible. And undoubtedly, some plastic guns that are toys look very realistic as well. And then Viking Martin Brown says, St. Omo's, I couldn't remember the name, thank you. Well, yes, fascinating thing indeed. And perhaps one day we could make a video on it and talk about it, perhaps. Yes, I could ask AI and she'll have all the information. I don't know. Although I did a video the other day talking about Vikings and asking AI, was answering some questions, and she was talking about Viking and Norse food, and she said that they had ski yogurt. Well, maybe they had yogurt, but I don't think it was probably called ski, the famous yogurt. So I think on that one, she probably made a mistake. But did they have yogurt? I've never heard about that. I don't know. Or some kind of a creamy dairy product. And I'll probably leave that in the video. So when I do publish that video, you can watch it. It's quite interesting. Just me asking some random questions of AI about Vikings. Oh, and Brad says, no, St. Elmo's fire is static electricity that builds up around the mast or even the whole ship mount. Friend in the Navy saw it. Yeah, what I'm thinking about something else, aren't I? I'm thinking about when you get gases erupting from marshes, and occasionally it can come as a blue haze, or it's had lightning hit it and it's ignited. So I'm thinking about something completely different then. But what's that called? That's got a name as well. And then Sam says, I feel like mine was a static electricity phenomenon. And then Brad says, on certain weather conditions. Yeah, I know exactly what you're on about now, but I'm trying to think what the one with the gassy marshes is, the marsh gas. And then Viking Martin Brown says, I took my uncle's police pistol to a school when I was 6. My dad and mum weren't happy that my uncle had put his pistol where a 6-year-old was able to get it. Yeah, that's a bit crazy, isn't it? And if he did that these days, not only would he get in a lot of trouble, and of course we often forget about Northern Ireland, that the police all have pistols and guns, don't they? Because I know that from watching that police drama set in Northern Ireland, which was actually very good. But again, because I've never really been over often to Northern Ireland and that part of the world, I've not fundamentally seen it. And of course, we don't fundamentally see the police in the UK very often with guns. Occasionally, when I go in Derby Centre, I've seen 1 or 2 armed police officers walking about, but that's been a while. And then Sam says, got to go, guys, fixing to go home. Well, you have a safe journey and have a lovely evening, my friend. Yeah, my tea's going cold now, but I'm not wasting it. Yeah, so any more comments? I've got no idea what. Oh, I do have an idea. It's 11 o'clock. I was going to say I got no idea what time it was, but silly old braggy. I got a bloody clock on my wall. I'll probably take these. I don't know why I wear necklaces. Always make my neck ache. And I've got to get my dinner at some point. I think I might have a bowl of soup. I don't know. I've got to think about my dinner. I've had nothing to eat today. There's a thought. I've been so busy, I literally not had a chance to eat anything. And then Martin Brown says, well, Sergeant David Brown, RUC, was killed in 1982 by the IRA using a pistol from the USA. But of course, you know, that's a terrible thing. And I can't imagine what the family must have gone through. And of course, a lot of firearms did get imported from the USA and all over to the IRA. And of course, yeah. I think my uncle was based in Ireland when he was in the army. He was an RSM. And then he spent a lot of time in Germany. But he spent 25 years in the army, which I'm sure you agree is an awful long time to serve in the army. Then Martin Brown says, I had a chicken and cheese toasted sandwich for dinner. I don't think I've ever had a chicken and roasted cheese sandwich. What does that taste like? I normally have like bacon and cheese. I've got no cheese at the moment. That's terrible, isn't it? No cheese. What a shock. I could just eat a bit of cheese. The last bit of cheese I got 4 eggs and I cracked them in my frying pan, and then I grated a load of cheese on top, and I must say that was very tasty and yummy. And then I got a can of baked beans and then slovered it all in baked beans. And then Martin Brown says, my uncle was an RSM. And Swell laughs out loud. I was only a LCPI in the army. Yeah, I did try to join the Air Force, but I said I wasn't intelligent enough. And then I did think about joining the army, but my dad said he didn't want me to do it. So my dad persuaded me not to go in the 90s and join the army. But I do regret it partly because it could have been the making of me. And of course, I didn't do it, and I kind of partly regret it and partly don't regret it. But it is what it is. And then Leonardo Roller says, finish. Ugric has yogurt for over a millennium called Vaili. Yeah, so they definitely had yogurt then. But she just called it ski, like the famous branded yogurt of the day, which I don't think is fundamentally correct, unless I'm wrong and it is correct. And perhaps ski is a very old word, or I think it's SKYRE, but it's a very old word in Scandinavian for yogurt. So perhaps AI is fundamentally right, and I may be wrong. I don't know. I've just not had time to think about it and do a bit of research. And I think today I filmed 16 videos today. So that's been a good day. I did a load of videos yesterday. And then last night I went to my local pub, the Abbey, and I went with my neighbours and met. And because my two other friends of mine, Martin and Marie, they won the Abbey Inn. So it's nice to have friends that are a landlord and landlady And they've been there for 2 weeks now, and I must say they're doing such a great job. And it's amazing to think that we're sitting in a place that dates back to 1137. Is how old the building or parts of the building is. And I went down on Friday, which was quite funny. I think they told us on Friday, the live stream, about the two drunk people that were at the pub. Were quite funny. A guy called Craig who had an electric bike, and first of all, we saw him in the distance fall over on the floor, and then he came over and we asked if he was all right. He said, "Yeah, I'm all right." He said he kind of gave a big drunken smile, and he just said, "Oh, I've had too many beers." So we kind of insisted that he have a glass of water. But I don't think he ever got in the end. And then we had another guy that looked a bit like Boise from Only Fools and Horses, and a bit like Jethro, who came and brought me a beer. And he was a bit of a character. And apparently, I was told last night the locals called him Boise, and he headbutted somebody in the paper mill at some point in the past. So he could get a bit lively. Yes. But I won't be going for a beer until at least Friday. Is my next planning occasion to have a beer. And then Martin Brown says, anyway, I'm away up early. Have a good night. And my cat called Pudding wants to sleep on bed. Yes, I miss having cats. If we're going to have a cat, it's going to be a big ginger Tom, and they're going to call him Dave. And I go outside then, and then I'll go out and shout, Dave! People will be wondering that I'm shouting some random guy when I'm actually shouting a cat. And then Leonard the Roller says, if you want something more sour and with more protein, you can go with Raka or Mayit Olaka. Right, well, that sounds quite cool. I don't mind sour food. It's a bit like sour sweets. I quite like them. But I suppose you also get used to the taste. I mean, I'm just getting used to the taste of having tea with no sugar. In the past, I'll drink it like this and I'll go, no sugar, that's horrible. But now I'm getting to the taste like, actually, I'm all right. I quite like that. So I'm getting used to having no sugar in my tea. But I'm trying to cut sugar out as much as possible because it's not good for you. And I'm trying to think of longevity and trying to live longer. So do we have any more comments before I got to think about disappearing and getting something to eat and going to bed? Because it's nearly 10 past 11 at night. I need to lie down with my back aching. Martin Brown says, try shouting pudding for getting the cat in laughs out loud. Yes, well, my dad used to tell a story about one of his relatives back in the 30s who had a dog, and it had a very appropriate name, which I won't mention on the camera or on the live stream ever. Because in those days they gave cats and dogs names that were, in today's world, highly inappropriate. You may be guessing what I'm talking about, you may not. But yes, having a cat called Pudding when you're outside shouting, Pudding! You're going to get all the people out thinking you're giving away free pudding, Martin. Oh, yeah. It makes you think how old that word is, actually. Pudding. Where does it come from? How old is it? What's your favourite pudding? I love a good apple crumble myself. Or apple pie. Oh, yeah. Apple pie with cream. Oh, yeah. And then Leonardo Rhoda says, no e-bikes. Get a gas-powered bicycle instead. Well, I've got a wacky brother who I've not seen for many years called David, and he once made a jet engine and put a jet engine on his bike. So that probably goes a bit further. But it didn't last very long, about 2 minutes, and it ran out of petrol or whatever he was using. Rocket fuel, probably. He probably made rocket fuel himself. He's clever enough. But I don't really fancy an e-bike. Just, But you can get little petrol motors to put on your bike frame, can't you? And then that converts your little mountain bike into a petrol bike. But then do you need car tax for that? I don't know. I mean, I got a mountain bike, it's outside, but I've not ridden a bike for years. I found it outside of a skip from a German lady. So I thought, well, I may need a bike in the future, so I took it. But I don't leave it in my garage because it just takes up so much blooming room. So perhaps I need to take it and put it in my shed for the weather sets in autumn and winter, just to protect it from rusting. It's called a Vulcan, but it doesn't not have pointy ears. And then tonight, when I finish this, I'm going to continue watching the new Flash movie with Batman and the Flash. And, well, I don't know if Superman's in it. No, Superman's not in it. It's got a Supergirl instead. But I did watch a good bit of it, and I quite enjoyed it so far. Let's have a look at the top fans. If any of you have increased your point. Well, Arola Leonard is now #1 top fan with 150 XP. Well, I've got no idea what you meant to do with your XP points. And then Leonard Arola says, tea with sugar is a crime. Earl Grey is beautiful, unnatural. Yeah, well, I tend to, when I want a sweet tea, I just use honey now. So I literally stopped buying sugar, and I just either have it with no sugar on its own, which I've gotten used to, or just put a spoon of honey in it. Sometimes in the morning, give me a boost of energy. And I do love my honey, and luckily I got quite a bit of honey in the house for various reasons. But I got a lot of honey. It's gone set, so I got to get a big pan and get some water, not boiling, but get it warm, so I can put the honey in another pot, and then I could desolidify the honey and put it in jars. It's going to be one of my tasks. Perhaps I might film that as a video if my kitchen is tidy enough. Oh, thank you also for the 7 likes. Fantastic. It does help. And, do enjoy the videos. I know I put quite a few out today. And then Martin Brown says, pudding, French for sausage pudding. Oh, yes. Sausages. I had sausages last night by chance. What are the chances of that? I had them with chips and onion rings. Very nice, but I've got no more sausages left. But I do like a nice fancy sausage with a few herbs in it. Oh, yes. Yeah, something a bit more expensive than an average sausage. And then Leonard says, lots of gas kit for bicycles on eBay and Amazon. Cheap too. Well, yeah, that's a good way to convert a mountain bike into a gas-powered bike. But I don't know in the UK if you do that, whether it's classed as a motorbike then. I suppose it depends on the size of the engine. And we have a comment here from Berserker, MS Low Maximo, Crow Odin T Mendiga, Harmano Valhalla. And of course, if I had an AI on my phone and my hand, I could translate it. Purely Maximo means maximum. Of course, Odin means Odin. But anyway, a warm welcome to Northworthy. And praise Odin, of course. Oh, look, we've got 10 likes now. Thank you, guys, for liking this live stream. Yes, I was going to try to do some at the weekend, but I just got overly busy. But I'll try tomorrow night, if not Wednesday. Because I know last month I did 22 live streams last month. So definitely nice to get back in the habit. And, it's better than just sitting down and watching rubbish TV to do a live stream instead. But of course, there's a limit how far I can live stream for, and I've got to get some dinner at some point. But we'll keep going for a bit longer. We'll see, if we've got any more comments, any more do you have any questions for me? Is there anything you've ever thought about asking, whilst I'm live on camera? Of course, I can take off my jewellery now as well. I've been trying to wear more jewellery these days. Just be a bit more individual like I used to be. But I still can't find my Viking bracelets. I got some lovely Viking bracelets, but God knows where they are. They're somewhere in the house, I think, I hope. I've got too much stuff. I'm trying to get rid of stuff. I keep throwing stuff out of the arse. I've thrown a lot of stuff out the last few days, which is, it's progress. And then we have a comment here from, is it Filius Titus Gallus? Hello, brothers. Christ, her. Oh, well, the Vikings, of course, they were called Christ. The Zweite Kleister, the White Christ. And then Leonard says 50cc usually. Well, 50cc is enough of an engine size to attach to a mountain bike. So I like that idea. I just think of all the time it would save you, especially if you've got to go up hills. And there are some good hills around this area, especially if you go towards Belper. There are some right big hills. There's a saying in Belper that if you live in Belper, you're always going to be fit. But I'd very rarely ride a bike, but I like to walk everywhere. Walking's good for you. And if I've got to go in Derby Centre, then it's only 2 miles, 2.5. What's that? 30, 40-minute walk on a good day. If I've had some beer, it might be slightly slow on the way back, depending how many pubs are going. But yeah. But anyway, I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to end the live stream because I've done 90 minutes. I need to get something to eat because I'm hungry. But I will come back. If not tomorrow, I'll come back on Wednesday. But hopefully, if I feel like it tomorrow, I'm going to try to come back on tomorrow night. And of course, I'm always editing videos. I'm always trying to work on the channel. And I'm also trying to sort my house out a bit more and tidy it up so I get a bit more peace and harmony within my own brain. But I'm not living in a disorganised house, but it's more organised. So I'm getting on with that as well. So yeah. So any final comments before I disappear? I don't mean in a magical sense. If you ever see me on camera and then I just suddenly disappear, then that could be quite frightening because, that's magic. But I'm going to disappear off YouTube and then go and think about making a thumbnail for this video. And I've got 2 more live streams I need to look at the thumbnails at as well, which I'm not done yet really. But I've just been overly busy, as always in life. But yes, enjoyed this live stream. I did enjoy the one the other night. I did enjoy the one, I think, last week, what was 3.5 hours long. That was really entertaining. But I'm hungry because I've had nothing to eat today. And I got to try to settle down for my sleep. Because if I'm not careful, I'll be going to bed at 2 or 3 in the morning and then it leaves me unbalanced. And then I'm getting up later in the day. And I'll try to get up early tomorrow if I can, around about 9 o'clock. Which will be in 9.5 hours time. So yes, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And this is my new little bit of a setup upstairs on my little settee where I've been doing some filming. So I've got a little few props around, and there's a picture of Fred Dibner. You ever know who Fred Dibner is? And I could have put my LED lights on, but you won't probably see them all, as you're only going to see the bottom of them. But yeah, and then I'm currently over in this direction. I'm currently setting up a kind of a desk area and where I can sit behind a desk and do some filming as well, a bit like some of these professional channels. So that's something else I'm working on for the videos, where occasionally I can sit behind a desk. I'll have a fake mic and on a stand and so forth. So yes, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for the 10 likes. Thank you for everybody that's watched this video. And of course, if you're watching this video after the live stream and you got to this part of the video and you're still here, then you're awesome because you've been watching for 90 minutes plus. And do take your time to leave a comment, and I will promise to try to catch up with the comments and comment more and answer more of the comments, because I'm just been running out of time, and I just I just don't have enough time to answer comments. But I will do a few tonight, and then a few more tomorrow, and gradually, hopefully, I'll catch up. But I know I got comments from weeks ago and a few months ago I'm not even caught up with yet, because I'm continuing chasing comments I've not replied to. But I will get there. It just takes time. I need to have like a week off from publishing videos and a week of answering comments. But then again, publishing videos is probably more important than answering all the comments. And a pity we don't have AI incorporated into YouTube, which I imagine will happen in the future, because that could make some of the comment answering a little bit easier. So Leonardo Rowley says, thank you for having us over. Well, you're more than welcome, because, I wanted to do a live stream today because it's the start of the week. I just want to make sure everybody's okay. And of course, this is all about the channel. It's all about caring for each other. And of course, also about building community, because the better the community we have at Northworthy, the better the channel is going to grow. And we're all growing. We're getting some really good stats. And engagement rate on the shorts is currently at 71%, which is fantastic. And the long format videos, I've noticed that those videos are doing an awful lot better than before. So that's making me a lot happy as well, because I can, if I'm getting better results, I can make better videos. And I'm also trying to get my hook at the beginning better, which I'm working on, and I think I'm fundamentally achieving, because it's all about the hook. You got to hook them in at the beginning, and it takes time. And I'm still learning after 8 years. But it's quite ironic, I think, when you think about it. Next week it's our 8th year anniversary, so we're about to enter the 9th year. But won't it be quite ironic, as a Norse Viking, and the fact that we've got a lot of Norse content, that we go viral and the channel blows up in the 9th year? And perhaps all along this was our destiny, to blow up when we entered the 9th year. And of course, 9 is a magical number. So it's goodbye from me, and until we meet again on the channel, take care. And don't forget, in the wise words of Egil Thorson, let's make the world a better place, and upwards and upwards. Goodbye, folks. Goodbye.